All right. Hi, everyone. Thank you so much for coming to this session. I believe one of the most important sessions, and we have folks who are live with us today. And of course, we are moving into this topic. If you've been following me long enough, you know that my work involves helping people overcome challenges, adversities, and trauma, predominantly professional women, helping us really overcome our challenges to gain the confidence to be advocates for ourselves and for the community that we live in and our workplaces. This topic is necessary. How to put your passion into action to kill racism. We seem to be having a theme these days that people are in this killing spree. People are dying. Not only are they dying because at the hands of violence in our communities, but they're being killed by the predominant and pervasive ignorance that a lot of us are experiencing. And because I just believe a lot of us are wondering what's going on. And I question a lot of people that if you're not asking that question, what's going on, I believe you are really trying to remove yourself from the reality of the world. And from time to time, I don't blame you, because we need a respite. We need time to refresh, to renew, because it is very traumatizing. But I want every single person who watches this video to please share it. You can freely share it. Share it with someone else who needs to hear this message. So the question is, what's going on? What's going on? We have an overall disregard for humanity, and a continued belief in superiority and privilege. Bottom line, point blank, period. We don't have a regard for human life, foundationally speaking. And for us who are confused by this, we need to understand, and we need to come back to reality that this is what's going on. And we, I believe, as white rise advocates and the community that I want us to really think about creating is a regard for humanity, a regard and understanding of what superiority and privilege does to the human psyche. It makes you believe, one, you're infallible. Two, you don't have a deep desire to empathize with other people. And truly, at the end of the day, it becomes a very narcissistic society. So I really want us to really think about this and really begin to understand that this is what's going on at the root of it, because all the isms, racism, sexism, really all of those isms come from this mindset. And we shouldn't be shocked by this. This should not shock us to believe that people are like this because of everything that we're going to be talking about today. So the foundational thing I want you to know, that when you come into this community, when you come into this Rise Advocates community, we are about healing, Healing, healing oneself, and really making certain that we are speaking up in spaces and in places where we're not necessarily invited, but we speak up and we are doing the things from a very healed space, thereby making certain that someone's words, someone's actions, and someone's other beliefs don't take us too far off center, right? That's why we're going to have this message today. Because if you know anything about the issues that go on with racism and people who have an overall disregard for humanity, and the people in our history who have overcome some of these disregards, they have learned the tenets of advocacy, which begins with forgiveness. All right. So I want to quote one for you. Nelson Mandela. Do you know about Nelson Mandela? Nelson Mandela he was in Africa, and he was one of the biggest leaders to overcome apartheid, basically slavery for Black people in Africa. He was imprisoned for years for what he believed in. He was physically imprisoned. This is his quote, and this is something I want us all to think about. As I walked out the door toward the gate that would lead to my freedom, I knew if I did not leave my bitterness behind and hatred behind, I'd still be in prison. I want you to really think about this, because most of us are dealing with the imprisonment of our mind. We are imprisoned by our mind, shackled with hatred and shackled with blame, shame, guilt, and a lack of forgiveness, which if you have attended any of my presentations, you understand that that is a recipe for heart disease, because your heart becomes hardened. And my gosh, you know what happens when we become hardened? Guess what we do? We fall back into this, having a disregard for humanity. It is a two-edged sword for us to be able to understand that at one end, we have got to believe that our voice matters and we need to speak up. But at the other end, if you allow yourself to be hardened and you allow yourself to be structured and designed and have your brain be hardened to this hatred, you are no different than the oppressor. Are you understanding this? Are you realizing this? Yes, this is coming from a person, myself, who I've lived the majority of my life at the intersection of race, having a white father and a Black mom, right? And growing up with a very abusive father. This quote by Nelson Mandela means so much to me, because when I left my high school and I left my house growing up, I realized that if I left this place and I walked out of there with bitterness and hatred toward my father, toward my childhood, toward everything, I would still be in prison, right? And quite frankly, I believe dead because of my own desires. I went to law school because I was angry. Yes, I was an angry Black woman, angry, frustrated, mad, bitter, ready for revenge. And that got me promoted quite a bit in the corporate world. But what was it doing to me on the inside? Killing me very softly, killing me. So I want to share that with you because I can't emphasize enough that of course we're going to be upset. Of course we're going to be angry. I am not denying our human belief and our biological makeup, but I have to have you guys capture this very essence, because this is why we do a practice. You follow me long enough, you know that at the root of advocacy is a healed individual, right? So that we can keep hope alive and keep the faith. So I want you to understand a little bit of human psychology. 95% of us live through the subconscious programs of our mind, and only 5% of us have conscious thoughts. We have programs that we have built up from our zip code. If you know anything about fair housing, if you know anything about the history of our world, and I say fair housing because you know that there's a documentary out, you would know this. If you don't know this, I'm going to let you know, called Zip Code Matters. Why does zip code matter? It's because whatever zip code you come from, which is a question I ask often when I do auditing and assessments of companies and individuals, you typically will live your adult life based upon what you've learned from your zip code. And there are so many studies that tie zip code to your overall health, to your mentality, to the way that you show up. It all matters, unless you are changing your programs, which is the reason why. Some of you are like, why do you send text messages every Monday, Wednesday, and Friday, Diana? Why do you do that? That's because you are not going to learn everything that you need to know from 1 hour per month in a session. You are not going to learn everything that you should know about changing your programs by not having intention with your practice. It just doesn't work that way, right? There's a reason why when we're watching television, and let's use a Super Bowl, for example, there's 16 commercials that say the same thing in 1 hour because they're trying to program your brain, right? So if you are following me and then you understand what I'm talking about, can I get some snaps in the house, in the chat? Okay, to understand this takes time, this takes practice. So we all live from our biases. Oftentimes we hold ourselves and others hostage. We cancel people, boom, based upon our subconscious thoughts, bam, because this is what happens. So when you feel you are under pressure, you're going straight to your bias. That's just the way that our human mind is developed. Don't believe me? Spend some time studying emotional intelligence. Spend some time studying neuroscience. And if you follow me and you're in my programs and you are with me, you know these books, you know these studies. So I want you to know what the F is going on inside of you. What the F is going on inside of you? How many of you know how you respond to trauma? And there are 4 F's. So you want to know what the F is going on. I want you to do your own assessment. What happens when you're triggered? Do you want to fight? Do you want to flight? Do you just freeze like a deer in headlights? Or do you fawn? And I want you all to put this in the chat. For those of you who are watching the recording, I want you to think about this and answer the question for yourself. What's your first response when someone attacks you? What's your first response when someone says something to you that you don't agree with? Go ahead and put that in the chat for those of you who are joining me live. And for those of you who are watching the recording, I want you to sit down and think, right? All right. And so some of us, you know, some of a person who's on live here is saying, I want to fight, right? I want to fight first, but then I act and think about what's really going on. That's just be completely honest with yourself. Some of you are like, well, what is fawn? Fawn is people please. Oh, I don't want you to think that I'm, you know, right? I just think you're amazing, but please don't think that I am. That's people pleasing, right? Someone says, depends on what it is, fight or freeze, right? Be honest with yourself. These are, once you know what the F is going on inside of you, you can start to figure out how you can kill this thing called racism, right? Because if we act out of our first response, if we act out of our F's and we take that all the way through, nothing happens. Nothing happens because you are emotionally enraged, and you will follow this context and you will find yourself repeating these patterns of behavior. We need to understand that our first response is going to come out of the F of us. So what is my first response? I want to fight and I want to run away. That's just kind of the way I want. I first fight. I'm ready to fight. And then I want to run away so that I could go get to taking care of something else. And I know that about myself. right? I knew that I went to law school because I was ready for a fight. I was ready to talk about it. And I knew I could kill people with my words. So that's a good understanding to know. So fight, flight, freeze, or fawn. For anyone listening, and for those of you watching live, can you ask and assess the people around you, right? Because when you're in meetings, when you are around people, you will start to learn people's responses. And I just want you to know that, because you can understand most people who are quick to respond are also not quick to really look at their own emotional intelligence, right? So emotional intelligence allows us to have a deeper sense of self-awareness, self-management, relationship awareness, and relationship management, right? This is what we're talking about when we see people like Martin Luther King, Desmond Tutu, Nelson Mandela, all these people who talk about how can I get myself composed to go into the fire, right? Because they've realized doing these F things gets us nowhere. It makes you feel good, but it doesn't help change humanity. Are y'all picking what I'm laying? Are you picking up what I'm laying down? To kill racism, we have to understand how we respond. Now, I want to give you a movie that I believe does such a great job of, I think, articulating in a visual format the F's. And that movie is The Butler. And there's a scene in The Butler where they're being prepared for the lunchroom sit-in. And they are having these individuals who are going to sit at the lunchroom, and they're trying to see, how are you going to respond when someone spits in your face? How are you going to respond when someone calls you an N-word? What are you going to do, right? And they had to do that because they realized we can't have weak, soft-skinned people. We need people with an elevated mind to realize that when people spew out what they spew out, that's coming from their bias, their privilege, and superiority complex. You see? And the same thing happens with our military, right? That's why they go through boot camp. They need strong, mentally focused people who are not getting ready to pop off on someone. See, that's how we change and kill racism. That's why passion was developed. You see, passion came out of me, not on my experiences. The reason why I wanted to show you all my recent experience of being racially accosted at a park, and me showing you how I was just so upset about it that I started crying. And my tears were not necessarily for him and what he did, but my tears were, I was ready to fight. I was ready to get out of my car and I wanted to do something. And I realized I had to contain myself. I had to get myself under composure. I had to, because I don't know what was going to happen if I got out of that car, right? If I got out of that car, I didn't know if he had a gun. I didn't know if I was going to get killed. Everything that's going on in our society, do you realize that this is it's going to be happening? And I don't know if the tables would turn on me, that I would then be the one who's in trouble. So I had to really I teared up, but then I'm like, Diana, see, my F came out, right? I know what the F was going on. And I had to get back into my own words and passion. Diana, put your passion into action. Put your passion into action to kill this racism. As a result of that man spewing out what he did, and as a result of everything that happened in Buffalo and all of the places that have experienced this hatred and all of the shootings that are happening in our world, we all have to get our passion together so that we can start to speak. Not speak first, pause a bit, and then do some assessment, get some space, then speak. Then we can gain insight, become open, and gain knowledge. Now, I want to put this passion out here, and this, some of you might be the first time you've ever seen this acronym. This originally came out of someone way back like 6 years ago, introducing me to her parents as her Black friend. You see, every single time something like this happens to me, I view it as, oh, okay, God, you're allowing this to happen so that I can help thousands of more people. So everything that happens to me, I believe, is for a reason, for me to help change 1,000 more people. So this passion came out of this experience. And what is PASS? The PASS stands for stop, pass on rushing to judgment and blurting out your first response. That's the lower left of the screen. Pass on assuming you have all the facts. Pass on taking it personal. Pass on merely walking away and staying silent. You see, I'm not silent about this here, right? And canceling everyone you don't agree with. We are canceling, cancel, 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 cancel. Some people you do need to create deeper boundaries with and love from afar. I get that, but that's not what I'm talking about in here. So we need to break this down so that we can take this passion and put it into action so that we can kill racism and any other isms. And especially, let me acknowledge, this is the first day of June. This is the first day of LGBTQ+ month and Pride Month. And if you follow me on my text messaging, some of you got that message. So here's what we're going to be doing to take our passion and put it into action and helping our friends with who identify as LGBTQ+. PASS first is what we're going to be doing is pause. Discipline and train yourself to do your best to hold off on immediately blurting out your first thought about another person. The book called Switch On Your Brain by Dr. Caroline Leaf says that we have a 90-second time frame so we don't fall into what's called the regret zone. 90 seconds. That's a long time to sit and pause. Some of us need to practice this. Take a deep breath, right? Slow your mind down. Realize your first response is coming from your subconscious. It's coming. We have to acknowledge that. It's coming from the back of your brain. This isn't easy. This takes practice. Because the pausing that happened to me in the park from that man was likely from my fact that I was frozen. I thought the man that accosted me at the park, the racially accosted me, was my husband's friend because it looked like my husband's friend. So I was paused briefly and I was able to drive away, which helped me stay out of the regret zone, right? So this is what we have to do. Now, most people aren't doing this. Agreed? Most of us are just screaming back, especially the people who are supposed to be leading our country. So this is something that we all have to, we can't rely necessarily upon our political leaders, although we do need to be paying attention who we are putting into office to make certain that they have the fortitude and the emotional intelligence to help bring the issues that we care about forward in a way that will cause the change that we seek. Assess. Oh, I don't know why this does this, but it gets a little trigger happy. This happened last time. Sorry for those of you who are following along. Everyone is following along, Diana. Assess. Is what I'm thinking true? Am I holding on to a limiting belief? These are the questions that you can begin to analyze once you get the F out, right? Once you kind of come down from the F experience and realize I'm in my F zone, you can start to do this. Because when you're hot and you're on 1,000, some of us are going blank, right? And if you've watched the movie, I'm trying to think of the Sunken Place. I'm trying to think of that movie. But if you guys know what it is, put it in the chat. I'll think about it in a second. But we sometimes fall into the sunken place. Thank you, Anna. It's Get Out. Thank you for that. Yes, the movie Get Out. Some of us fall. If you've never watched that movie, by the time you get done with this, you're going to have a ton of books and a ton of movies to watch. Watch the movie Get Out, and you realize that most of us fall into what's called that sunken place when we're in the F zone. But once you move out of that 90 seconds, you can start to ask yourself some questions. Is this a racist idea or behavior? Is the person perpetuating a racist idea? Am I perpetuating a racist idea or behavior? These are some of the questions that I want you to think about as you're going through your assessment and you're pausing. In what other ways do I need to approach this situation? Thank God I had some tools in my toolbox to approach the situation that I was experiencing. Most don't. If you watch TikTok and if you watch people who are from my cultural background, and you will know not everybody is responding the way that I responded. Some people are getting out of their car, doing some things. Some people are backing up their cars into people and in their other cars. This is what I'm seeing often on TikTok and in other social media outlets. All right, who else can help me walk through this issue? Maybe you need to call a friend. But what you likely need to do is get some space, right? Share with a person or if in person that you would like some time to think. Like, say, for instance, you are in a meeting and you are having a conversation with someone. You might want to share with this person, hey, I need some time to think about how to respond in the situation. For a very heated, racially charged types of situation, may I just say, for those heated, racially charged situations, I want to encourage you to give you some space, because the likelihood of you working out something very positive is very low. Now, again, I wanted to share my video with you because it took a lot for me to walk away. And I know a lot of us are like, I wouldn't do that, Diana. I would get out of the car and I would say what I need to say. And you know what? That is certainly your right. And that's certainly something you can do. But I really want to challenge you. If you want to take your passion and put it into action, you're going to give yourself some space. Take a 1-minute mental health break. Perhaps you need some to sleep on it. I needed a few days, right, to sleep on that, to get me to go, okay, how can I take what I just experienced and help others with it? And if you still need some time, ask if you could have a couple days to respond if you are in the situation where it's not just a heated, racially charged moment. Okay? Then speak. Most of us are deciding to speak first, and then we pause, and then we have permanent space, and it's called cancel. Right? That's how it usually goes. I'm asking you to flip it around. Engage in meaningful, courageous dialogue that offers the opportunity for you to listen, ask open-ended questions, and learn about the other person or situation. Now, you haven't given the opportunity to sit down with that man in an opportunity to sit down, you have a space time to speak, then we probably could have gotten somewhere, right? And let me give you another example of this. During our racial rioting and the walks and the protests that we had, usually that's a time when you're out doing protests, you are not utilizing it. Most of us are speaking out. You know, that's usually, as Martin Luther King would say, the voice of the unheard. And we need to have those types of dialogue. We need to have marches. I am 100% for rallies. I am 100% for marches. Please don't mistake my passion acronym for that. But when it comes time to sit around the table, to come to a understanding, you need pausing and you need space and you need assessment. That's how we move things forward. So I just want to clarify that. Perhaps there are some things you took personally that need to be said. Say it. If you took something personal, and you felt like you were hurt, speak it. Speak it. Say it. Don't just talk to your friends about it. Don't talk at that little party that you're having with all your people who think like you and act like you about it. Do something. Speak after pausing, assessing, and getting some space. Because guess what? And you might know, you need to know this. It might take several conversations for you to get to a conciliatory ending. That's because if it gets uncomfortable, see, this is the thing. We are all designed to stay in comfort. Our brains are to help us stay in comfort, right? And none of us really want to speak up because I don't want to cause any rifts or we don't cause any. Most of us are letting our F's speak for us, and we just don't do anything. What I am proposing is a solution. And solutions take time sometimes. Because when you pass on doing these things, you will gain insight. You're like, oh my gosh, I never thought about that. You will then learn what I learned in my 50 years of life, that if I consistently allow my biases to keep me, I will have a wedge between myself and humanity. I will never, ever, as I knew before, I would never have married my husband who was white because I was against interracial marriages. Why? Because of the subconscious programs that were put into me when I was dealing with my father's abuse. You see how the cycle goes? You get a wedge between yourself and humanity. And all of a sudden, our superiority and our privilege starts to, no pun intended, trump our ability to be able to love others. So let's learn about your hidden biases, right? When you're speaking, you can get some insight about other things because you're in a place of calm and you can lean in differently, right? Learn who or what you need to help you remain accountable. Okay, this is where you all will say, okay, gosh, I just need some help here. Yes, I know. That's why I hire coaches. That's the reason why I'm constantly being mentored. And all of us need to consider that. Because when you gain more insight, you become more open. You become more open to learning. I don't have everything figured out. No, you don't. We all don't. We all need to learn. That's why all these books were like given to everybody after George Floyd. People were like, read this book, read this book. Not everybody's open to reading because we're not open to assessment of ourselves. We don't know what the F is going on with ourselves, right? So, I got the LPGA in here because this slide came from my conversations with the LPGA because the LPGA is doing this work, right? Thank you so much, LPGA. So what we have to do is dismantle. When we become open, we're open to dismantling these racist policies, procedures, and ideals, and you become more culturally aware. Yes, 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 yes. Yeah, the LPGA is in the house. I love it, love it, love it. And then when we become more open, guess what? We gain more knowledge. You guys know I had to have this for the acronym, and the K is always silent. So you learn as much as you can about the systemic racism, cultural differences. You learn about the policies and practices of your community. Wow, LPGA is in there again. I apologize. I did not clean up this slide. But thank you, LPGA, because this is my client and I love them. And I want you all to know that once you start to kind of do this, you become an effective advocate and ally in your organization, in your community, because you start to go where you know you are needed. And you get committed to sharing your knowledge with others, especially with those in your circle, not from a bruised and calloused positioning, but from a healed space. Are y'all picking up what I'm laying down? Yes, it's so, so very important. So that's passion, right? But we need to stay hopeful, right? And this is something I share with my clients, I share with my community, I share with everyone. This is an acronym that came from my friends, Chris and Jen Gottlieb. Help one person every day. If you have the mindset every day to stay hopeful, is just to stay hopeful means that you're going to get to the position where you're going to help one person every day, because your light, your energy, and the way you show up matters. The way you show up matters, and I believe that some folks watching this message, some folks who might be online here might, this is such a mamby-pamby, touchy-feely type of message. No, actually, this is the hardest thing that anyone will ever do, is to get yourself under control. Is to get yourself to understand that it feels good when we do fight back, and when we freeze and we fawn and we just flee. It feels good because that's what is in your human psychological nature. But to do something that's going to stay, that is going to considered like so amazingly awesome, that will change humanity, and that will have an impact long after your human life, you're going to put your passion into action. And you're going to do that strategically every single day by staying hopeful. So I want to share this with you. I hope that this has been beneficial to you. And I would really hope that you would want to stay in my community. And the reason is because this work takes time. It's a lifelong practice. So I would hope that if you are just trying to put your toe into my community, you can do that by becoming a Tier 1 Rise Advocates member. And here is this cute little, you can do QR codes for everything now. little dinosaur. You can take your phone, put it up against this QR code, and you will see how to become a Tier 1 member. For those of you who are interested in diving in, we have the Rise Advocates Academy. And if you're interested in that, I would love for you to email me. That is a course that we offer. It's an 8-week class for those people who are serious about doing this work. And we have some certified Rise Advocates out here. And guess what? Even after you become a certified Rise Advocate, you still need to do the work, right? It just doesn't end. It never ends. And the reason, and that's the beauty about life, is that when you're consistently wanting to live your life to the full and be a change agent, it doesn't end. So I want to say thank you so much for all of you attending today. Let's continue to stay connected. Our next Rise Advocate session is on July 20th. We have a session going on right now. For those of you who are watching the replay of this timestamp is we are in June 1st of 2022. And of course, we will have our next session on July 20th, 2022. So thank you so much for those of you who are watching. And I am so grateful for you being here. Thank you so much.